We have a timekeeper right down front. The candidates have been notified of the time constraints, so we will move right now to our first opening statement. And for the first opening statement this evening, we will go to District Attorney candidate J.K. Summers. Mr. Summers, you have 60 seconds, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. Folks, I'm J.K. Summers. I've lived in Brunswick County for over 53 years. I've been a trial attorney for at least the last 13 years. I have a breadth of experience in many different courts here in Brunswick County. But Brunswick County is just one county in our district. Columbus and Bladen are also in our district, so I have to represent them. So it's important that I'm a part of the community, both in Brunswick, Bladen, and Columbus County, and I get out and I meet these people, because justice is not always served in the courtroom. You got to know the people you serve.
Thank you, sir. Next, for her opening statement this evening, we will go to District Attorney candidate Jenna Early. Ms. Early, you have 60 seconds, ma'am.
Thanks, John. I'm Jenna Early. I am currently the first assistant district attorney for the 15th prosecutorial district, which is Brunswick, Bladen, and Columbus counties. I live here in Leland with my husband, Matt, and our 4-year-old son, Michael, who is by far the best part of my life. But a really close second is my career as a prosecutor. I have spent the entirety of my career serving the state of North Carolina, first in Alamance County, and then coming to this district in 2018 to work in John David's office. During the course of that time, I have had experience in all of our counties, serving as chief in Brunswick, chief in Columbus, and now as the first assistant. This work is what I was born to do. It is what I wake up and have the honor and privilege of doing every day, and I look forward to serving as your next district attorney.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Early, I'd like to ask you for the first response to the question that I'm going to give. Both of you will respond to the next series of questions. I'll rotate who goes first. Ms. Early, it has been brought out that the district attorney's office in District 15 has had a lot of turnover in the past 2 years. If you're elected, what will you implement to stop the turnover issue? 60 seconds.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think it also is important to note where the office is at right now. And right now there is one opening in the office. And so while there was a period of turnover, that was also a phenomena that we were seeing across the state. Back when I was applying to be a prosecutor, you would have hundreds of applications for one position. What we are seeing in that 1 to 3 year mark is a lot more movement out of DA's offices into private practice than we previously had. The fact of the matter is, right now, over half of the prosecutors in our office have 10 or more years of experience. Since the summer of 2024, we have attracted 4 10-plus year career prosecutors to our office. And so what I intend to do is to continue to lead from the front. I've been a prosecutor, stand with the prosecutors that are in the office.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Summers, if you're elected, what will you do to implement to stop the turnover issue in the DA's office, sir? 60 seconds.
Thank you for that question. First and foremost, you can't fix a problem such as we have in the current district attorney's office here. It is not a statewide. There are issue. It's a few counties like Wake County, Buncombe County have turnover. But the problem is you can't fix a problem until you admit that there's a problem and then you investigate what the problem is. Having folks there now with these tenure that have come in, what's going to keep them from leaving also? There's a problem in our current district attorney's office, and I'm not going to stick my foot in my mouth and say I know all the cures. I don't know. I got to get in there and find out what's going on. And I've been talking to the former assistant district attorneys that left for the last 6 months, interviewing them, finding out what's going on. And so that's my mission. You got to admit the problem and find out what the problem is.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Summers, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the next question. With the background of in the questionnaire that our media group sent out to both of you, you both mentioned that the State Bureau of Investigation resources are helpful in assisting with some investigations. Yet there is an investigation involving a former sheriff in Columbus County that has gone on for at least 3 years with no findings announced. The question then, what will you do to see that this investigation is either completed or given priority to ensure public trust in the DA's office?
That's a great question. Thank you. I'm not privileged to that investigation. I imagine it's regarding Sheriff Green or former Sheriff Green. can't speak for the issues on that, but transparency is a big issue. And if I could work with the SBI and other law enforcement agencies and put a rest to this and get rid of this, Sheriff Green, if you're indeed talking about his law careers was ended because of this. And when he didn't get due process, as far as I know, and that's an epidemic across this whole district attorney's or this district and some statewide issues. So, yes, this case and many other cases are bottlenecked because there's not a process in place to help SBI or other law enforcement.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Early, there's an investigation involving a former sheriff in Columbus County that's gone on for at least 3 years with no findings announced. So the question, what will you do to see that this investigation is either completed or given priority to ensure public trust in your district attorney's office?
And that's a fair question. Shortly after Sheriff Green resigned in January of 2023 for the second time, that investigation was turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. That was done for the very purpose of transparency, to take any further investigation, analysis of facts out of our district and place it in the hands of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so it is my understanding that they have not rendered a decision. Certainly, being that I have spent my career as a prosecutor, I have built very strong relationships with our U.S. Attorney's Office, and I think communication with them is paramount, as it is with the State Bureau of Investigation, which I speak with regarding other cases on a weekly, if not daily basis. And so it's my established relationships and communication that will allow for all cases to move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Early, I'd like to ask your response to the next question. As elected district attorney, if you're elected, what will your office's policy be in seeking high bonds for dangerous criminals, repeat offenders, or individuals arrested for sex crimes against children?
So when you talk about setting bonds, that is done by magistrates, judges, judicial officials. Certainly at first appearances and at bond hearings, it is the role of the district attorney to advocate for a position on bond. When you're doing that as a prosecutor, you should be guided by a few things. First, 15A. 15A lists out the statutory factors to consider when determining what bonds you want to argue for. In addition, across our district, both here in Brunswick County and then in Bladen and Columbus, because they are a separate judicial district, we have bond guidelines that are set by our senior resident superior court judges in conjunction with our chief district court judge. And so we look to the bond guidelines set within there. In addition, IRENA's law that was enacted and put into place on December 1st of 2025 created a rebuttable presumption that no bond is permissible.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Summers, as an elected district attorney, what will your office's policy be in seeking high bonds for dangerous criminals, repeat offenders, or individuals arrested for sex crimes against children?
Well, any kind of victim crime, sex crimes, domestic violence crimes, crimes against whoever, violent crimes in general, all that needs to be looked at on an individual basis. And I would seek higher set bonds. IRENA's law, the North Carolina Supreme Court has a specialized task force. They're looking at this particular subject to come up with greater standards for us and greater protection for the citizens and the community. IRENA's law, IRENA Zarutska, that was a tragedy in Charlotte, and we can't have it happen again. So along with the Supreme Court's of North Carolina's recommendations coming out this fall, I plan on having a task force amongst the whole district, all three counties, law enforcement officials and citizens, so that we can ensure safety for our citizens, our children, and our neighbors.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Summers, I'd like to get your response first to the next question. It has been nearly 20 years since the last execution in North Carolina. What is your stance on the death penalty? And if elected, how would you approach cases where it would be warranted, or could be warranted, excuse me?
That's a great question. I have never opposed the death penalty. I think the egregious factors set out for us in the statutes and the rules of law, all the way down from our North Carolina Supreme Court to the judges and judicial system. Each case is unique. Each case needs to be investigated to thoroughly, all the way to from the top to the bottom. But I've always been an advocate for capital murder case and the death penalty. I know a lot of folks don't think it's inhumane, but if the aggravating factors against the victim are inhumane, why should they get off easy?
Thank you, sir. Ms. Summers, if elected, what would your stance be on the death penalty, and how would you approach cases where it could be warranted?
I think you meant Miss Early, but that's okay. Certainly, I have served the state of North Carolina for the entirety of my career, and I believe in the death penalty. Now, what's important to note about the death penalty is, first, if that particular homicide is statutorily eligible. And there are specific factors laid out in Chapter 15A that dictate in what circumstances it can be sought if those factors exist. Following that, the prosecutor, or the DA's office rather, has the discretion to seek the death penalty in cases in which aggravating factors do exist. It is important to have a fair and across-the-board process in order to ensure that every case is looked at in the same manner. And that's why it is important to convene a panel of senior prosecutors in order to systematically go through each first-degree homicide case to see, one, if it qualifies, and then two, if the office is going to seek it.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, candidates, we will turn to reporter questions. Questions asked specifically to each one of you by reporters from our media organizations. You'll have 90 seconds for every answer. Aaliyah McConnell from WHQR and Connor Smith from WECT News will be the two reporters. Aaliyah?
Okay. Good afternoon, Ms. Early. My question is, John David has been DA for 15 years. What similarities and differences would you bring compared to his leadership style, and what changes would you make to the office?
It's a fair question. John and I have some similarities, but we certainly, I think, have our differences. One, you can see that in our trial styles. We try cases together. He'll joke that, he tries a case kind of just with a hacksaw, where I go in more as a surgeon with a fine-tuned scalpel. I think that because I have worked in that office as a prosecutor for nearly 8 years, and I have spent time with everyone in that office, I have a unique relationship as far as leadership goes. I have an ability to listen and talk to everyone. And I think John and I listen in different ways in that regard. As far as changes to implement, when you're talking about a 3-county district, you have to be mindful of moving resources around. Right now, for instance, we have 4 prosecutors and 2 separate first-degree murder trials. And so that creates a resource strain. And so you have to make sure that you have strong systems in place to support other team members when they are pulled to those other places. And so ensuring that those models exist is paramount.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Summers, in your questionnaire, you said cracking down on the drug trade is the biggest challenge facing the DA's office. How would you approach this issue? And can you give us some clear and tangible goals you would look to accomplish as district attorney if elected?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. It's a two-sided question. You got the people that use, that are addicts, and they commit a lot of breaking and entries and all that to subsidize their habit. The key thing that I would focus on is reducing the supply. We have got to cut off the supply. We have got to work with the sheriff's office and the other agencies, DEA, FBI, and stop the fentanyl and the meth labs and the people supplying the drugs. They're the ones benefiting from this. The community is at harm because, especially senior citizens getting robbed. There's a lot of senior citizens in this county that are afraid to go out at night alone. They have to go in groups just because we got so many people out in the rural areas especially that don't have the protection. Our law enforcement spread thin because we're so large, and that, all three counties is literally almost 3,000 square miles, the district is. So the first thing is to get people well to decrease the demand, which we have specialty courts, the Superior Court here and the other counties, to treat the addicts, so to say. But we got to cut off the supply of drugs, and that's the main focus. And that'd be my main focus.
Another question for you here. John David has been DA for 15 years. What will be different on day one if you win? What are some concrete changes we would see in the first 100 days? What should we know about your management style?
Well, my management style, I relate it much to being a head football coach of the football team. If I win national championships and I've got assistant coaches and players that I've been out on the field sweating and getting dirty with and teaching techniques to, let's just say if I win a national championship at Alabama and then I go to LSU, guess who goes with me? My staff. And so that's the loyalty you have to build. You can't lead from the front if you got nobody that's going to follow you. So John David's office, he came in and he reorganized some stuff when he inherited the office, I believe, from Rex Gore 15 years ago. John David made a public announcement in Brunswick Forest January 14th that no matter which candidate's elected, he will be there the next 10 months because none of us take the position neither one of us, until January of 2027. So we got 10 months to make that adjustment, learn what he knows, but then go find out what the problem is they got right now. And that's what I intend to do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ms. Early, I have a couple of questions for you. In your questionnaire, you said your top priority is standardizing the systems and workflow of the e-courts system. How would you go about achieving that?
So we've started that already in pieces. I think it's there's different buckets for it, right? So part of one of the biggest, I think, implications that we have had in moving towards or moving to e-courts is the way in which we receive discovery, or the evidence packets, we'll call them, from law enforcement, the way we synthesize them within our office, and then the way we send them out. So when you now have them coming in all of these different portals, that creates a significant amount of strain on our legal assistants. And let me be very clear, when I say the legal assistants are the backbone of the DA's office, not a single prosecutor could do what we do without the hard work of the legal assistants, bringing all of that in, being the front lines, and then making sure it all gets out where it needs to go. But we owe it to them, we owe it to law enforcement, and we owe it to the victims that we serve to ensure that that is done as efficiently as possible. Law enforcement shouldn't have to put it in multiple portals. We should have a better system for large pieces of evidence, like phone dumps, things like that. As technology evolves, we have to make sure that our discovery portals are keeping up with all of that. And in addition, when we are able to bring it in and get it out more quickly, defense attorneys are able to get that, go through it with their client, and we are able to ensure that the wheels of justice, which often turn slowly, maybe don't turn as slowly.
Okay. And when setting bond, you stated that you'll do so within the guidelines of Irina's law. What's the importance of mental health evaluations to you when recommending someone's pretrial release conditions?
That, I think, is a significant piece of information that we sometimes have and we sometimes don't. And certainly is one of those kind of gap resources. I think that when we talk about new laws coming in, that is an additional resource that there needs to be more emphasis on, because when you talk about the turnaround between an arrest and a first appearance, you're generally talking about a matter of hours, maybe an overnight, right? And so having systems in place, there are some areas, some districts rather, that have pretrial services that create those pretrial reports, because mental health issues are important to identify, because it is not necessarily true that a secured bond might be the best for that person. That's going to be super fact dependent, situationally dependent, and all those things. What we need to be able to do, though, is to identify those issues. We can also do that in the form of forensic evaluations. I know that the sheriff's office here is working to sign on to an MOU that would allow for restoration processes to be handled at local facilities, not just having to be sent to our larger facilities. And what that'll do is allow for those processes to be quicker, those mental health services to be administered, and then those court cases to continue to move forward in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Summers, if elected, how important would crime prevention be to your office? How would you work with community organizations to prevent crime in the community?
That's a great question. All my adult life, I've worked with different community organizations in a volunteer service. I learned that from my parents, who've been volunteers in this community and built this community all their life with their own time and their own money and their own service. And I follow that model. To me, the role of a district attorney is not merely just to prosecute crimes. It is to serve justice in your community. And in order to do that, you got to know your community, and you got to know their values and where they come from and what they need and what they want and what their fears are. So it's police involvement, teen court, getting out in the community and talking to folks. I spend a lot of time in Child Protective Services Court, which cases I can't ever talk about as far as name stuff. But I see kids that are abused sexually, physically, and by their family and their parents, and it's tragic. And I sit in that courtroom probably 40 hours a week in plus the other cases I handle week in, week out. So if we could start with the family and reunite the family, teach parenting skills and protect our kids, then we got a future that we can build on. So that would be my focus in the community, find out what their needs are, speak to the farmers, the folks that live in the municipalities, and so on and so forth. You got to get outside and meet people. You can't sit in a room and just focus on prosecuting one or two crimes.
Thank you, sir. You said in your questionnaire response that you are, quote, committed to working with the media to keep our community informed about public safety and prosecutions, balanced by protecting victims' rights and ensuring fair trials. Does that mean you're advocating for judges to open up courtrooms for cameras, notwithstanding cases that involve child victims, sexual assault, or witness intimidation cases?
First of all, our judges are wonderful, and they have a great gift of discernment. So whether they let the cameras in or not, an issue in our courtrooms has been, especially with gang violence or gang-related or cartel-related or drug-related. In the past, we've had folks sit in the back room with their iPhone or a video who's testifying or giving up evidence against them. So we had to shut down with the chief judge and our resident Superior Court judge said no phones for that very reason. Because they were finding out who they would need to go after, who was snitching, whatever you want to say. I am not against the media covering our cases at all. I think the more the media covers and the more they know, the more transparent it is what goes on in that courthouse or the other two courthouses, Bladen and Elizabethtown, and Whiteville. So totally, if it's transparent and good information, I'm all for the public knowing what's going on. There's some things that Ms. Early, if she was asked a question, would tell you the same. There's some cases we can't identify victims. We can't have them sitting in the courtroom seeing people that have been raped or their families have been murdered. You got to protect people's rights, period. No matter what the end result is, you got to protect victims.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Ms. Early, in your candidate questionnaire, you stated that Bladen County is in greater need of specialty courts as opposed to Brunswick and Columbus. Why do you feel that need exists in Bladen County? And if you were elected, how would you help establish specialty courts there?
So I don't know that I said it was in greater need. It is in need because they don't have a specialty court there. So right now in Brunswick County, we have had for years a robust specialty court program. We've got drug court, DWI court, mental health court, you've got WOW, and those courts have existed for years. The continuity and consistency that those courts bring is vital. In the middle of 2025, some opioid settlement money, allowed for the development of JMARC, which is a drug treatment court in Columbus County. The way they differ a little bit is Brunswick County's specialty courts are run out of the Superior Court. Columbus County, it's run out of District Court. But again, the same principle, a treatment team, dedicated individuals that are consistent, because what the research tells us when you're talking about specialty courts is that consistency is what helps make them successful. And so what I was saying is that certainly Bladen County is not exempt from individuals who deal with substance use and abuse issues. And so giving them that access, I think, is important. And so certainly you have to look to grants. I think grants are a huge way that you can get, or a very frequently used way to get specialty courts funded. Certainly, whether there's opioid settlement money available to Bladen County is worth being explored. But certainly the individuals that live there deserve that resource too.
Thank you.
Candidates next, our reporters will ask questions sent in by our audiences of Port City Daily, WHQR, and WECT, some submitted here this evening. You'll have 2 minutes to answer the questions. It will be Aaliyah McConnell from WHQR and Charlie Fawson for Port City Daily. We'll begin with Mr. Summers. Charlie?
Summers.
Good evening.
First question. If you were elected, you'd be taking a new role, and I guess how would you view your first 100 days in the role? Is there any specific goals or concerns that you'd like to address in those first 100 days?
From day one, I'd like to investigate what the internal issues are, why we can't keep qualified attorneys in the largest law office in the district. It's been going on for a few years. I've interviewed some former assistant district attorneys to find out what the problems are, but I won't know until I get in there. The district attorney's office needs to be available to the community, the citizens, and law enforcement. People shouldn't have to call in and make an appointment just to see their district attorneys. The position of district attorney is to recruit, retain, coach, hire, and keep, retain. That way we have consistent policies for the next 10, 15 years. We have consistent policies in Brunswick County, Columbus County, and Bladen. Right now, if you ask the folks that work in those courthouses outside of Bolivia, there's inconsistent application of court procedures and stuff in all three counties. We got to be consistent. We're one district, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. And Brunswick County is growing to the west, which will be Columbus and Bladen. And those folks over there see it coming, and they want their due process, their rights preserved, and they want to have a voice. And right now, they don't feel like they have a voice. And it would be interesting if they were here today so they could speak up and say, we want a voice, because I am going to be their voice. But I'm also going to be the voice of our community here, there, in both counties, all three counties. And that's not happening right now. The transition that John David said that he would stay, if I get elected March 3rd, I don't take office for 10 more months. There's plenty of time to build and strengthen the district attorney's office. I've got some folks who have called me and said, if you get elected, would you consider bringing me back to work? Absolutely. If they're experienced, yes.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Early, this question comes from an audience member.
Okay.
They ask, why do you select certain cases while so many stay incarcerated for years? Because their cases are complicated.
That's an interesting question, because I don't think that I do that at all. I fear nothing about my job. To be clear, no case is not complicated, okay? And to say that, I think, is quite beneath the dignity of what we do every day. Every case has its turns, twists. What really matters is that you have the experience, ability, strength, and temperament to deal with all those twists and turns. What really matters is that you have the experience and foundational relationships with law enforcement and other community stakeholders to get the job done. Cases have to progress based upon the seriousness. When there is more evidence that needs to come in, that takes more time. When there are more agencies involved, that takes more time. But not one thing is prosecuted to the exclusion of another. Sure, right now in Columbus and Bladen County, those counties each have a first-degree murder trial going on. So there are not other trials going on in those courtrooms because you can only try one thing in one courtroom at a time, right? And so that does create then a ripple effect for other cases that were on those trial calendars. But those defendants deserved their day in court, much like the victims deserved for those cases to be heard. And so what you have to do is work within the case management systems that our senior resident Superior Court judges, Jason Disborough and Ashley Gore, have developed in partnership with the district attorney's office in order to ensure that cases move forward. We have a robust case management system in the entirety of this district. Our judges are proud of it. Our offices are proud of it. We conference our cases every other month to ensure that nothing is getting lost in the balance.
Thank you.
Mr. Somers?
Yes, sir.
So this came in from online. What actions would you take to address illegal enforcement activities by ICE officers? And would you bring criminal charges against an individual ICE officer if the evidence supported illegal actions?
Yes and yes. As far as the officers go, everybody, even police officers, ICE agents, we all have to follow the law. We have to follow the statutes. We have to enforce the statutes. We are not above the law. We're not above anybody else. Everybody deserves due process. Due process. And I think one of the sheriff's candidates talked about it earlier, that when you have a grievance or something like that, you get the chance to talk to the officer first before the district attorney or anybody else rushes to judgment and condemns those folks' life. Like I alluded to the former Sheriff Green. I believe there's some issues there, but I know I'm not involved in that. But everybody, even the ICE agents, deserve due process. We have a structured process to become a legal citizen, and we do not need. Everybody needs to follow law. Why should people cheat and become American citizens or just live in America on our taxpayer dollars when we have a process in place? It's not perfect. We've argued about it. The presidential candidates argued about it. It's there. Let's maintain the borders. Let's maintain our counties and our highways and roadways, and let's maintain our standard of life. And if an ICE agent is out of control or any officer is out of control, we'll have to investigate that. But first, I think we owe it to their supervisor, their commander-in-chief, however you want to put it, to investigate what really happened, and then let's have a conference about it and see what's going on before a rush to judgment. But I absolutely support ICE and all our Border Patrol and all our immigration, Homeland Security, all of them. Absolutely. We just have to follow the law.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This audience member asks, what led you, Ms. Early, to change parties to become a Republican?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so it's no secret that for the entirety of my career and really my life, being the daughter of a law enforcement officer, my life has been based on the rule of law, personal responsibility, both foundational Republican tenets. There was a period of my life back when I was younger that I was a registered Democrat. I was unaffiliated for a number of years, but my core values have always been those things. I live those principles in my daily life, personal life, and every time I walk into a courtroom, the rule of law guides every facet of that. There also comes times in our life, especially when you've done this job for a very long time, when you handle cases where you see lives ripped apart, where you have cases that you have prosecuted come back and sentences adjusted by liberal-leaning courts with activist judges. You become a mom, and these things all change you. And they make you sit and reevaluate where are my principles aligned? And so during the course of my life, I have done that related to my political affiliation. I have done that just in my self-searching that I do on a daily basis, because every day that I wake up, I need to ensure that I am doing justice and doing the right thing and living by the way I was raised, living by my faith, living by my duty to my state, to my husband, and to my 4-year-old boy. And so certainly after Michael was born, that was a reflective period in my life. And I made the decision to say, no, this is who I am.
All right, thank you.
Summers, another question for you.
Yes, sir.
So as DA, as mentioned earlier as well, but you'll be working across 3 different counties.
Yes.
And thus multiple different law enforcement agencies.
Yes.
How would you go about working with each one specifically? And how would you handle a situation where you and a sheriff, for example, might disagree?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, first and foremost, in the last 6 months, I decided to run for the open position of district attorney. And granted, it wasn't open 6 months ago. But I recognized we had a problem. And I talked to my fellow defense attorneys, and there's a problem, and we got to learn to fix it. And it's not just nothing against our district attorney. There's an issue, a problem. So back to your question, how do we fix that or if I run into butt heads with a law enforcement official? Well, we're gonna sit down man to man. We're gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna have to respect their opinion, and they're gonna have to respect mine, and we will come to a solution. That's how you do it. You negotiate. You don't just force your opinion down somebody's throat. There's a rule of law. Law enforcement got to follow the rules of law. I've got to follow the rules of law. And we got, difference of opinion do not ruin or dictate that we violate our constitutional obligations. We all take oaths to follow the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of North Carolina. And that's the approach. We got to communicate together. No one's better than anybody else. You got to listen and be a positive listener and then respect everybody's opinion. And it can be tough sometimes. I haven't run into it yet, but I imagine it will happen in the future if I'm elected and when I'm elected. And that's how we're going to go from there. Each situation is different.
And then you mentioned communication, but outside of that, is there anything else?
I'm going to, all the law enforcement, I'm sorry to cut you off. Law enforcement will have my cell phone number, and I'm going to have a separate cell phone number just for like the hotline for them, so we can talk about what they need and where they need to go and what resources they need, because there's going to become an issue. I'm not going to sit in an ivory tower behind a desk. I'm going to be out. I'm going to drive. I put 18 tanks of gas in my Toyota Tacoma in the last 15 days because I drive and I meet and talk to people, and I love it. I don't have a radio in my truck or anything. I just think. That's my thinking time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Early, what is your plan for prosecuting drug traffic cases? And I'm just going to throw this in there since it was posed to Mr. Summers, and immigration-related cases in this county.
So I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. So drug trafficking, prosecuting those, and then prosecuting immigration cases?
Yeah, your plan for prosecuting immigration-related cases and drug trafficking cases.
So we are really fortunate in the DA's office now that when it comes to drug trafficking cases, we have prosecutors who have spent the majority of their careers handling drug cases. And so why that's important is because those prosecutors have developed relationships with the narcotics officers in each of their respective counties. So it allows them, in building those relationships and having those relationships, to know not only how to respond when those instances occur, but how to develop operations in order to target those offenders. And so that having experienced prosecutors in your office who know how to work with law enforcement, who know what to what to look for, is paramount to prosecuting drug traffickers. As far as immigration goes, as district attorney, as prosecutors, we are sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of North Carolina. And so when someone violates a criminal law, It is the job of the district attorney to prosecute that. And so certainly that is done based on the available facts and existing law at the time. And our office always has been and always will be committed to doing that.
Thank you.
Candidates, that ends the question and answer part of our forum this evening, but we do want to give you one more opportunity, perhaps an issue that we didn't touch on, perhaps a message that you'd want to leave voters with before we leave this evening as they head to the polls. So we will give you a closing statement of 60 seconds each, and we will begin with Republican candidate for District Attorney J.K. Summers. Mr. Summers, 60 seconds, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. I'm going to read a quote or an article from the National District Attorneys Association, and I encourage you all to look this up. It's called the People's Attorney. District attorneys represent the government in criminal cases, but more importantly, they represent you, the members of their communities. Their job is not simply to win cases, but to seek justice with fairness, integrity, and compassion. Whether they're called district attorneys, state's attorneys, or county prosecutors, their mission remains the same: pursue truth, uphold the law, and protect the rights of all involved. That is my commitment to you folks here tonight. That is my commitment to the folks in Bladen County, Columbus County, and all folks that move here in the future and are here now. I'm J.K. Summers. I'm a lifelong Republican. I registered in 1986. I've not switched parties. I have lived in this community for over 53 years. I've come from a family of community service volunteers. This is not about a feather in my cap. It's not about a dollar bill or a career. It is about representing you, my community. And I encourage you to vote for me on March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, for her closing statement this evening, we will go to Republican candidate for District Attorney, Jenna Early. Ms. Early, you have 60 seconds, ma'am.
Thank you. That's absolutely right. That's what the role of the district attorney is. But let me be very clear about something. I am the only person sitting here that has any experience doing that. And it's not just experience being an attorney, it is experience being a prosecutor and being a proven prosecutor. I have done that for the entirety of my career. Why that is important? Because in order to be successful, you have to know the craft. I already know the craft. I have done the craft. You know, something that was said earlier, that the office can't keep qualified attorneys, that tells me exactly what kind of leadership would be in place if Mr. Summers were to win. Because to say you can't, that this office can't keep qualified attorneys means that the 15 attorneys that are working in our office right now aren't qualified. And I take umbrage to that, because those people are going to work every day on behalf of the citizens of this district to fight for justice for each one of them. At the end of the day, what you need to ask yourselves.
Do you want to finish the thought?
Is if the worst thing in the world happened to the person you love most, who do you want leading that organization, and who do you want giving that closing argument?
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, will you give our candidates a round of applause, please? We'd like to thank those of you who have been watching this live stream, those of you who have gathered here at Leland Town Hall. Before we go any further, once again, I'd like to thank Town Manager David Hollis, Town Clerk Sabrina Reinhardt for making this available to us for this forum this evening. We appreciate your kindness in allowing us to come in here and better educate voters on the sheriff's office race and the race for district attorney in prosecutorial District 15.